Despite the fact that it was hyped up, that everybody thought that Avatar: The Way of Water was going to do monstrous things on opening weekend, $500 million worldwide. Those were the projections. They fell short. Now, of course, it still dominated in the box office. Nobody can argue that, with a over $430 million global haul. But domestically, the numbers ended up being far lower than what people initially expected. Avatar: The Way of Water failed to live up to box office expectations its opening weekend, putting pressure on Disney's $2 billion bet. And yes, Avatar 2, The Way of Water, needs to hit $2 billion at the box office, according to James Cameron himself, for this movie to be profitable. That is a massive number. That is a tall task for any movie. Only a couple movies in history have done numbers like that. And that's reportedly what this needs just to break even. But despite the fact that absolutely these are disappointing numbers for what they expected, within those numbers, there's actually some positive signs for Avatar in terms of the longevity of Avatar 2 and what it could do over the next several weeks. Box office, Avatar 2 opens to $134 million, behind expectations, but still sizable. That's not exactly the way anybody wants to be described. James Cameron's big budget tempo will need strong legs in North America over the year-end holidays. Globally, it launched to $435 million. And when you do look at this, obviously a stark difference. The reason this movie can't be compared to something like a Marvel movie is because, quite frankly, it's going to have much longer legs. It's going to have way longer legs, way better legs than a Marvel movie, than an MCU movie. And also, the numbers that it's picking up internationally are going to vastly outweigh what we normally see from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. $134 million, but over $300 million internationally. But I do think it's important to get into some of these data points here. Despite Avatar: The Way of Water missing its $150 to $175 million projections, that's what people thought, and it comes in at 134 domestically. Rival distribution sources and exhibition aren't bothered, nor do they believe the sky's falling, particularly for a movie that cost, according to sources, around $460 million before P&A. $460 million budget before all the print and advertising stuff. Like, that's outlandish. Now, of course, a lot of the money that's wrapped up in that will likely be because they're using a lot of the same tech, a lot of the same sets, a lot of all that stuff to film the other movies. Avatar 3 is already filming things like that. So a bunch of that was probably wrapped up in this first one right here. But still, that is a ungodly number. When it comes to the ultimate fate of Avatar 2, which is propped up greatly by IMAX, PLF, and Premium 3D, we have to play the long game. Factor in that 20% of the sequel's pre-sales are showtimes beyond this weekend. So there are people this weekend that are buying tickets to like IMAX and 3D sales and things like that for a couple weekends from now, for the pre-sales that don't go into this number. That's interesting to think about. Normally an average Marvel movie, their pre-sales stand at 5% beyond opening weekend. Each day from Monday through New Year's weekend is like a Saturday at the box office. Media outlets at the time of Titanic and Avatar's play immediately declared them bombs before they became the highest grossing movies of all time. And that's also true when you look at those numbers. And this studio says, don't ever bet against James Cameron. And this is somebody from Disney, right? They're saying, we got word of mouth, we got a great movie, we have screens and a clear run through the holidays. All those are true. Now, of course, that's what I would say if I were in charge of Disney productions and all those things as well. Providing confidence that Avatar 2 has great play ahead of its stellar audience exits, the cinema score, 5 stars, the audience ratings, all of that. Avatar 2's Friday to Saturday declines only 16%. That's the best Friday to Saturday hold for a year-end tentpole release ever, beating things like Rise of Skywalker or whatever, Force Awakens, which was a 43% drop. Spider-Man No Way Home, a 40% drop. The Last Jedi and Rogue One, 39 and 35%. Like, so when people are talking about the legs that this potentially has, that's one of the things they're talking about. It simply doesn't have the drastic fall off. People don't need to watch this right away. At least that's what it seems to be. Despite the disappointing numbers, when you look at the inside, there does seem to be hope that this movie could do what people actually think it's going to. Top Gun Maverick was floated as a comp for Avatar 2, given the long-awaited sequel. Avatar 2's ease from Friday is even ahead of that of Tom Cruise, which declined 27% between its first Friday and first Saturday. So there's a lot of things that need to play out, certainly. When you do look at the audience reaction, Rotten Tomatoes is what it is, but when we check the all audience, not just the verified audience, you see even the all audience, they're saying that they like it. But as we saw with Black Adam, Just because the audience says they like it, doesn't matter. If people don't show up to theaters, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the people that did thought about it. All that matters is, will more people go out there? And when you look at the first Avatar, when you look at this first one, look at the weekend to weekend, it was only a 2% drop. That's insane. Now, I do not anticipate that it's going to be anything close to something like that for this movie, because there's all the hype surrounding it being a follow-up to the biggest movie of all time. But when you look at these splits, look how much different it is in something like Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. That made less internationally than it made domestically. This thing's going to end up leveling out potentially less than $800 million. A failure for Marvel, a failure for the MCU, certainly a massive disappointment. But Avatar 2 off to a pretty big start, a pretty big global start, despite the domestic trailing what they initially thought it would be. It is a big number, but it's also a disappointing number. So it's really tough to get a good understanding of what this movie is going to do. One thing's for sure, if this movie doesn't hit $2 billion, it is yet another massive, monumental failure for Disney at the box office. After a year where they've had a ton of those, whether it's MCU movies, whether it's Strange World, whether it's Lightyear, things like this that have bombed for Disney at the box office. This is their last chance of the year. They needed this thing to be massive. They need it to be huge. Even if it gets to $2 billion, it still just breaks even. Avatar 2 has a long, long way to go. I said it before, I like this movie. I think it could have a chance to get to $2 billion, but will it get more than that? Will it actually be profitable? Only time will tell. Thanks for watching, everyone. And a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. And I'll talk to you guys later.